Applying nonviolence to solving community problems. Up to this point, we have been looking mainly at interpersonal problems, violence between individuals. We can learn, test, and use nonviolent principles and skills most easily with these problems. When it comes to the horrible and growing epidemic of violence in our communities, however, most of us can only wring our hands and avoid or run away from it. Yet there are things we can and must do. This session tries to point the way. First, we must go back to what we discussed early in the course. We are all one. As Jim Wallace so aptly put it in a January 1990 Sojourner magazine article called "The Second Reformation Has Begun," quote, "What we have yet to understand is that our destinies are all tied together. It is that failure to comprehend our common bond with one another and with the earth that is at the heart of our present crisis. Without that vision, we will surely perish," unquote. Secondly, our violent, dominating culture seeks to control and contain the symptoms. However, alternatives to violence, advocating a nonviolent partnership culture, teaches us that we must address the root causes. Otherwise, we can treat the symptoms perpetually. For instance, in just 10 years, we have doubled the number of prison cells in our get tough, retaliatory policy. But who feels safer? As far as results are concerned, the violent policy has failed. Thirdly, at the personal level, the principles and skills learned in this course do address causes. The huge magnitude of our community problems, however, overwhelms us. As with any big problem, solutions must be broken down into short-term, easily realizable steps. What we need to do is to recognize that the personal actions have their counterparts at the community level. The main difference is that between two people, the actions of one often can transform the outcome. In the community, effectiveness usually requires working with other people in order to have a sufficient impact. At the community level, no one can do everything, but, and this is the key, everyone can do something. When enough become engaged, then change takes place. Mainly, we need the guidelines, the confidence, and the will to act. This section seeks to motivate us in that direction. We are not saying this is an easy path to follow. From our earliest years, misinformation, disregarded and slanted history, and stereotyping socialize us to reinforce, rather than improve, existing violent cultural patterns. Our beliefs and perceptions are constantly reinforced by individuals, symptoms, or institutions we know, love, and or trust. These may include our family, our religion, our education, our government, and its leaders. The media play a very important and, too often, unrecognized role. This socializing to the cultural norm happens to the oppressed as well as to the oppressor. A collusion strengthens the patterns as those in power see the condition as their due, while the powerless see the state in which they find themselves to be accepted as their lot in life. Thus, the cycle of oppression continues. To reduce violence, the cycle must be broken. To break the cycle, there are certain key elements which can work to favor our success. 1. Human beings have more in common than they do differences. 2. The differences are not inherent. They are culturally learned, which means they can be unlearned. New educational and informational approaches become essential. 3. The oppressed of all kinds have mutual interests. Those can be used to draw them together, to be more empowered for greater impact and effectiveness. And 4. From such an improved power position, the oppressor more easily can be induced to join the oppressors to improving conditions. To achieve such results, the principles and skills taught in alternatives to violence are basic tools. As Arnold Toynbee, the famous historian, once said, quote, "The quest for alternatives to violence ought to be given the first place on humanity's crowded agenda. It should come first because it is the most urgent of all and is also the most difficult. It is urgent because violence has become suicidal."